Hello there. Welcome to Just the Dis. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name's Brian. Today we're talking about Westerns, and we're talking about Westerns in 4K. 2 from Kino, 1 from Paramount. All very, very good. We shall start with Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars from 1964. One of the watershed films of Italian Western cinema, and one that would have a great impact on Italian cinema, Westerns moving forward after this, and, American cinema to a degree as well. These 4Ks are really good looking. This is a gorgeous transfer from the opening credits on. I was very impressed. Massimo Dallamano is the cinematographer. He composed the shots in this film, and they look wonderful in widescreen and 4K. He would go on to shoot for a few dollars more as well, which I'll talk about in a second. But right off the bat, I just got to say the transfer looks good to me. I was very impressed. And so this film, for those who don't know, well, I'm sure most people do, but Clint Eastwood's star is truly born in this film. And it is a more than loose reworking of Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo, the idea of a lone gunfighter coming into a town with some rival factions that he's able to sort of pit against each other. But Eastwood, from the very beginning, really establishes himself. He rides into town on a mule, which I find amusing enough. But there's some local gunfighter types that shoot at his mule and basically run his mule out of town, and he ends up having to jump off his mule. And the key scene at the beginning is him walking over to those gunfighters and saying, "Look, I know you're kidding around, but kind of hurt my mule's feelings." And he doesn't really understand your jokes. So if you were to apologize to my mule, and right away you can just feel the tension rising. These guys are getting their hands on their guns. They know that this is a challenge, and they are insulted. And Eastwood throws this famous serape over his poncho, over his shoulder to reveal his gun hand. And then lightning fast, bam, 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 he kills like all 3 of them. But it's just some great shots of Eastwood's face as he's delivering this monologue, and seeing the reactions of the gunfighters, the classic Leone shots of their faces as well. And you're just like, that's it. Wow, I totally love this character, this actor. He was a TV star at the time, working on Rawhide, I think in the 4th season or 5th season, I can't remember which. But he made this film on a break between 2 seasons. And it ends up, being this incredible phenomenon, in Italy, and then ultimately in the States as well. But it's got a lot of stuff going for it. One of the things I love about it is the villain, Ramon, is played by Gian Maria Volante, who is also in For a Few Dollars More, one of the great villains of all time. Just so shrewd, so sharp and dastardly, and just like you just feel an unease when he's on screen, like he could kill anybody at any time. He's that kind of psychopath. It's just a really great setup as him as the villain for one of the 2 factions that Eastwood starts to play against each other. And it's a great setup, and there's a great resolution, a great final shootout sequence, which is even featured in Back to the Future 3. Such a great moment. I won't go into those bits, but it has to do with Gian Maria Volante's character and his belief that to kill a man, you must shoot him in the heart. And that if a man with a rifle meets a man with a pistol, the man with a pistol is a dead man. And it's a very specific thing that he says, and Eastwood's character is very specific about seizing on that idea, and I love that. This has a great... actually, it's got a couple commentaries. I think these are all ported over from previous releases, but it's still really great features. The audio commentary from novelist and critic Tim Lucas is obviously great. He makes sort of a point to talk about a lot of things. He mixes his usual history and the cast and crew. He has so much detail down to like who did the trumpet solo in the theme to the film. Like he really knows those details, and I love that about him. He talks about how Eastwood characters have this comfort with an acceptance of death, and that gives him the advantage of the other gunfighters, like who fear death so much. His character seems to just be like, yeah, it could happen, it's just part of the deal, and I'm not really afraid of it, and so I won't hesitate in those moments when others might, that sort of thing. But there's some fun things that I forgot that he brings up in the commentary, that like Fistful of Dollars, he thinks it's a myth that this sort of reinvented or in some way revived the Western genre at the time. He mentions some of the most important American Westerns were coming out around this time, circa 1964 and prior, and he mentions things like Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo, Arthur Penn's The Left-Handed Gun, Anthony Mann's Man of the West, Don Siegel's Flaming Star, John Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which I'll get to in a minute, and others like Lonely Are the Brave, One-Eyed Jacks, Magnificent Seven, Ride the High Country. They're all examples of a genre he believes is not dying. And I think I agree with that. He says they have an elegiac quality to them, but not necessarily a death rattle, in terms of the Western is gone or it's going away. And so I think that's an interesting take. He also mentions movies like Will Penny, The Professionals, Riding the Whirlwind, and The Shooting, both by Monte Hellman. All great American Westerns produced right around the time of the Dollars trilogy. And in terms of when it was exported to the States, which is another thing to think about. This is 1964, but we're not actually getting them in the States until a little later because of some legal disputes with the Akira Kurosawa folks. United Artists doesn't come on board to distribute the films until all that is taken care of. They don't want to get involved in that. And I think Leone ends up paying out like 15% of his profits from this film to Akira Kurosawa, rightfully so, because he ripped him off pretty specifically. So anyway, these films get to the States a little later. So in terms of the reviving the genre aspect, they wouldn't get there until the mid to late 60s. And so he's just saying there's a lot going on there, and he's not wrong. He reasons that if Westerns, had any stumbling block around this time in terms of theatrical, purchase, it may have had to do with their proliferation on television with TV shows like The Rifleman and such. Maybe people were there was so much Western stuff happening between movies and TV shows that maybe people were not as excited to go to the theater to see them. That could be a thing, but he still thinks the genre itself is pretty strong, and that's cool. So he also tells this great story of the salary that Eastwood got for the progressive films, which I find fascinating. He talks about Eastwood gets $15,000 for the first film, and then how it jumped to $250,000 by the time they were going into film Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and that's when I think the U.S. rights were sorted out ultimately, and we were going to get them in the States. I think we got them all three at once, maybe, I can't remember now. But so Eastwood puts the salary in perspective thing by saying that Connery's making $750,000 for Bond films around that time. He's one of the most popular movie stars, maybe the most popular movie star at the time. And that by the time Eastwood does Coogan's Bluff in 1968, which follows the entire trilogy of the Dollars trilogy, his salary had jumped to $1 million for that movie. And that Connery, again, most popular movie star at the time, also hit $1 million in 1968. And it just shows how meteoric that rise was and how sort of significant these films were in terms of really blowing Eastwood up, and that kind of commanding that kind of money at that time, based on the fact that you started by doing a movie while you were on vacation in Italy, and then ended up becoming this incredible phenomenon. It's a pretty neat thing to think about. This icon of American cinema is born out of a vacation in Italy, ultimately, which I think is pretty funny. So anyway, really great movie. Great Ennio Morricone score. Iconic stuff. Beautiful. As I said, it's got the Lucas commentary. It also has a commentary by film historian Sir Christopher Frayling, which is equally good, like a really good track. Like he, I want to say he's a writer of a book on Leone, or Leone's biographer, and he really knows his stuff as well. He's a little more laid back and lets the film breathe a little bit, which I like. Then you an interview with actress Marianne Koch, a new kind of hero featurette for a few weeks in Spain, the Clint Eastwood and experience of making the film. Tre Voci, three friends remembering Sergio Leone, location comparison then and now, and image galleries, etc. So you obviously get your 4K and your Blu-ray in here. And yeah, like I said, it looks really good. I was very, very pleased with that. Of course, then we follow that in 1965 with For a Few Dollars More, which for me, personally, not only my favorite Sergio Leone film, also one of my favorite Westerns of all time. I absolutely adore this film. I think it is, just truly glorious in its mix of darkness and comedy and just this heightened reality that Leone was so amazingly, effortlessly able to create, and I love that. It's filmed almost a year exactly after the first film, originally titled The Bounty Killer, because that's sort of the two main characters, the Eastwood and the Lee Van Cleef characters, are bounty killers. And so that was almost the title of the film, but because of the success of the previous film, they go for a Few Dollars More, which I think is also a really great sequel title, and one of the great sequels ever. Although it's, it's unclear if it's the exact same character Eastwood's playing in the first film, but regardless, I think it ties together as the man with no name, even though he sort of has a name. In the first movie, they call him Joe a lot. Regardless, I still think it's great. The role that Lee Van Cleef gets for this film, which is truly the one that also blew his career up. And you'll say, well, but he was an actor long before that. Yes, that's true. But he was often a character actor, often the, sort of a walk-on or, small dialogue parts. He was part of a gang that was part of the movie or something, but he was never this prominent in the film. So this role was slotted for somebody like Lee Marvin or Robert Ryan or Charles Bronson or Henry Fonda, but Leone remembered his face and wanted him for the part and went to America for the second time. The first time was to get Clint Eastwood. The second time was to get Lee Van Cleef, who had semi-retired. He hadn't done a movie in about 4 years, I think, and he had gotten in a car accident and I guess really injured his knee, so he was not as mobile as he once was, but regardless, Leone was like, you're the guy, I need you for this part, and he got him to do it, and the movie is that much better for it, because from the minute that Lee Van Cleef enters the film, on the train, he pulls the emergency cord to get off the train in a stopping place that the train doesn't actually stop. He establishes himself as this larger-than-life bounty killer, and there's a great sequence where he looks at a poster for again Gian Maria Valante's character in this film, and it's such a great shot. It gets tighter on the poster and tighter on his eyes, and as Leone cuts between the two, he does these gunshots, bang 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 bang, and it's just one of my favorite, getting inside the head of a character kind of moments. Anyway, the film is more, I think what people forget is it's playing almost like it's a parody of this kind of Western. It's self-aware. It's heightened beyond, Fistful of Dollars, in terms of the bounty killers played by Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef are like superheroes. Like their marksmanship is ridiculous in terms of how good they are. They're insanely, the prowess they have is just incredible. And the movie kind of is making fun of that kind of thing in a way. There's a lot of jokes with hoteliers and women in hotel rooms, and just a lighter touch overall. Although there's some really dark stuff in this movie too, dealing with, again, the Gian Maria Valante's character. He's got a pocket watch, which is so well integrated in the film in terms of it's got a chime on it that he uses to set up duels between him and people he wants to kill. Usually people he's assaulted or killed their family members and has goaded them into this duel. And he uses the watch and says, when the music stops, that's when we shoot, basically. And the movie has some great moments where you start with the pocket watch chiming and it blossoms into this Morricone score that is one of my favorite scores and one of my favorite pieces of music he's ever done. It's just so beautiful and so incredibly integrated into the film. But anyway, from the moment that, prior to this, but from the moment that Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef square off in this hat shooting scene, they shoot each other's hats off and they just keep one-upping each other, and then basically they become sort of buddies in a way. Not good buddies, but a team in that they're going to go after this really bad guy together, and that's one of the things I love about the way the movie progresses. But Leone has said that in terms of American influences, film-wise, Veracruz and The Bravados, which also features Lee Van Cleef and a chiming pocket watch, by the way, two films that he acknowledged as a big influence on this. El Indio is the name of Gian Maria Valante's character. Incredibly psychopathic, maniacal villain. One difference in this film that I think is interesting is that he dubbed his own voice. And he's got he didn't speak English, so of course he had to learn the lines phonetically. But he has this deep, evil-sounding voice that makes him even more menacing in this film than in Fistful of Dollars. And I do think that there is it's not like you can't, if somebody's dubbed well, you don't necessarily know the difference, but in some way, subconsciously, his voice just matches him a little better in this film and makes the character that much more menacing. And I love that. Let's see here. Eastwood, like I was saying, there's sort of jokes. Eastwood has like some zingers in this film, which would sort of set up the stuff he would do in the, Dirty Harry movies and beyond, his catchphrases in a way. He's just got some great little bits in here. A lot of this stuff I'm talking about is coming out of actually, this one also has a Tim Lucas commentary, which again, great. And the Sir Christopher Frayling commentary, which is where I'm getting a lot of the stuff I'm talking about here. He did such a nice commentary. I took some copious notes and, I agree with a lot of what he's saying about the film. Really, really good track. Really enjoyed the Frayling track on this one. Now, yeah, I just love the way, I think I said it already, basically the way Leone balances the comic tone and the dark and nasty, violent things that happen in this movie, and the climax with the two bounty killers in El Indio is just truly one of my favorite things ever. I absolutely adore it. So I, again, was very happy with the transfer on this one. The 4K looks great. Again, you get two discs, the Blu-ray and the 4K. But yeah, really happy to have both of these on 4K now. And so we already had Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, so now we have the whole trilogy in 4K, thanks to Kino Lorber. So really good stuff. Again, the commentaries, we have an On Location in Almeria and Granada with filmmaker Alex Cox, which is great. He's a wonderful spaghetti western fan, and I love to hear him talk about those movies. You get the Frayling Archives for a few dollars more, a new standard Frayling for a few dollars more, so you get extra stuff from him besides the commentary, which is great. And Back for More Clint Eastwood Remembers, a few dollars more, very cool. Trey Voci, Three Friends, the same kind of deal on this one. So that is for a few dollars more, 4K, really good stuff from Kino. So those are Kino discs, and then so we'll go from Sergio Leone to John Ford with The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in 4K as well. This is from Paramount Home Entertainment. I thought we were just going to get a Blu-ray, but this is a nice 4K, and it comes in there. Paramount Presents fold-out slipcase. Very nice stuff. And again, we get a digital code plus Blu-ray and 4K. No features on the 4K. Not even the commentary, I don't think. So everything in terms of features is on the Blu-ray. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this film is from 1962. It is one of Ford's last Westerns. And it's a great one. I think it's among the best films he ever made, despite the fact that it doesn't have the Ford vistas, the epic landscapes that he would normally include in his films. This is more of a backlot movie, and I don't mean that to sound like I'm putting the film down. It's just it's much more of an intimate film. Ultimately, it's about the grandness of the West in another way, if you will. And it opens with this train rolling into the small town of Shinbone in an unnamed state, as far as I can tell. We see Andy Devine, great character actor, one of Ford's stock company, waiting for the train in a really moving shot. Just the way he takes his hat off and he crumples his hat a little bit. There's something to that. You're like, what is happening here? And then off the train comes James Stewart and Vera Miles. James Stewart plays Rance Stoddard, a now prominent senator, who's coming back to this small town for a funeral. We find out is for a man named Tom Donovan. And Tom Donovan is John Wayne's character, and he's at the point in the film we are watching at the beginning, he's dead, and he's about to be buried. Everybody's been aged up, so we see Stewart, Vera Miles, Andy Devine, Woody Strode. They're all aged up so that we can then have the character James Stewart plays flashback and tell the story. And this is the story for those that maybe aren't aware, the sort of print the legend story. When the legend, becomes fact, print the legend. And it's the story of this town and an uppity attorney who comes out west to this small town and is immediately robbed and beaten by this notorious outlaw named Liberty Valance, who's played, of course, by the great Lee Marvin. And Lee Marvin's Liberty Valance is such a bully and such a murderer and so violent that no one, even the law folks in Shinbone, Andy Devine, of course, plays the sheriff or the marshal, is willing to face him or try to put him in jail because they're afraid they'll be killed. And the initial robbery actually takes place outside the town limits. So I think the Liberty Valance character is aware of that the marshal's jurisdiction does not extend there. But eventually the attorney, played by James Stewart, figures out that his jurisdiction is actually not, it's part of that. It can be covered by that and that he can arrest him. And so we get sort of this building man out of his element story of this attorney who believes in law and order and wants to take down this bully, this outlaw, who is sort of coming to terms with the Wild West. And the Tom Donovan character is the other toughest man in Shinbone, who is, less educated, but definitely understands the ways of this town and the West in general, and that you can't go about things as if law and order is the true word that's going to save everything, and he's a really tough guy. He's the only guy that'll stand up to Liberty Valance. And so we sort of see their relationship play out, and I won't reveal the ending, but obviously it has a lot to do with the title, and you can kind of see why there's, again, an elegiac quality to this film and a nostalgic quality to this film. It's shot beautifully in black and white, and the 4K looks wonderful. The black and white 4K was just, kind of stunning to me. I was really, really impressed. Again, with this 4K transfer, I think Paramount did a wonderful job with this. But this cast is so great. It includes John Ford regulars like Strother Martin. I don't know if these are all regulars, but the rest of the cast. Lee Van Cleef, again, shows up here as part of Liberty Valance's gang, the kind of role he would play in one of the later films. I think he did maybe How the West Was Won after this, but this is not a big part for Lee Van Cleef. To see him later and for a few dollars more, you see why it's a big step up. Anyway, also included in this cast, John Carradine, Denver Pyle, Jeanette Nolan, Edmund O'Brien. I mean, it's just this really wonderful, and the previously mentioned Woody Strode. Really solid cast, really strong story, and, a moving story, ultimately. Ford was able to do that. If you can get on board with the kind of emotional things he's doing, this is the kind of movie that could move you even to tears by the end. It's that powerful, and I think gets a little less credit these days than things like The Searchers, Stagecoach. Those are the two big ones I feel like people remember Ford for. And I just think it's one of his best movies. So I was really excited that this got not only a Blu-ray, but a nice 4K release. It looks wonderful. It had some really nice features on it. We have the new filmmaker focus, about 8 minutes with Leonard Maltin, who's always great. I mean, just talking about Ford in general, talking about the cinematographer, talking about the cast, talking about the relationships between Ford and James Stewart and John Wayne. It's a really great little interview with him. And then this commentary, which I think is being ported over, obviously, from something else, but it's really great. It's with Peter Bogdanovich, who obviously knew Ford, loved Ford, has his own archival review recordings of both Jimmy Stewart and Ford that he incorporates into the commentary track. So as he's talking about it, which I would be happy enough just to hear Bogdanovich talk about Ford, like he's just one of those guys that you're like, oh, he loves this guy. It'll be great to hear him talk about it. But he incorporates clips from both James Stewart and John Ford in here, and that makes the track that much better. Then you have select scene commentary with introduction by Dan Ford, along with his archival recordings with John Ford, James Stewart, and Lee Marvin. So you have more archival recordings in there. And then The Size of Legends, The Soul of Myths featurette, also great. Just a really wonderful 4K Western from Paramount. So lots of good stuff coming this month from both Kino and Paramount. Beautiful looking 4Ks of some Italian Westerns and one classic American Western. And I enjoyed all of them. So I recommend all of them. Definitely check them out. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.